Welcome into the College Football Show with Alec Pecano. On today's show episode, I am covering some way too early win totals for the college football season, as well as record predictions for all the Group of Five and Power Four conferences, and looking at win totals for the SEC and the Big Ten, and giving you win totals that I think you should bet on, and record predictions, like I said, for the entire Group of Five and Power Five, Power Four conferences. Let's get started. Let me share my screen. Win total odds. So, like I said, we're starting in the SEC. Starting the Big Ten. So the Big Ten first. Illinois. Regular season win total of 5.5 wins. It looks like they're leaning with the under here, and I would agree with that. I really like the under 5.5 on Illinois' win total. So I'll take under 5.5 wins for Illinois. Let's go down some more. Let's go to Indiana. Indiana, 5.5 wins. No, here we go with Indiana. It looks like they like the under a lot, but I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to take over 5.5 wins. I think Indiana can win 6 games this year and make a bowl game easily. 6 games, I think they can win. So I would take over 5.5. Iowa, 7.5 wins over under. I think I really like the over here at minus 142. I am taking over 7.5 wins for Iowa. Maryland, they're also set at 7.5 wins. And this is another one where they're leaning toward the under. And in any other year, I would take the under. But I think Maryland's going to win 8 games. So I would take the over here. Michigan, 9.5 wins over under. They really like the under here, and I do too. I think Michigan wins less than 9 games. I think their win total for me, I think 9.5 is a little too high. I'm going to say 8. So that means I would take the under on Michigan's win total. Michigan State, 5.5 wins. I'm taking the odds makers like the under. I don't agree with that. I think Michigan State will win over 5 games. I think they win 6. 6 is the max I think they win. So I would take over 5.5. Minnesota, 4.5 wins. They did get Max Brosmer, a transfer quarterback, and they really like the over 4.5. So do I. Over 4.5 wins for me, for Minnesota. Well, first of all, Nebraska over under 7.5. I'm taking over 7 wins for Nebraska. I think they can get up to 9. I think they can get 9 wins. Northwestern. I think that this is blasphemy to me that they only have Northwestern at 5 wins. Northwestern won 8 games last year. And how are these odds makers going to come out and say they're only going to win 5 this year? I understand the Big Ten added Washington, USC, UCLA, and Oregon. But I still see a path for Northwestern to win more than 5 games. I think Northwestern's ceiling should be 7 or 8 wins. Their floor is probably 5. But I can see them winning 7 or 8 games and getting to a bowl game again. Ohio State. 10.5 went 10.5 wins over under. The odds makers like the over, and again, I do too. I think over 10.5 wins isn't a stretch for Ohio State. I think they can win 11 or 12 and maybe go undefeated. Oregon, regular season win total 10.5. I also like the over here for Oregon. They did a number in the transfer portal and in recruiting. I like over 10.5 wins for Oregon. Penn State, 9.5 wins. I mentioned when I did the Big Ten that I think they can win 10 games. So I'm taking the over. And it seems like the odds makers agree. Over 10.5 wins for over 9.5 wins for Penn State. So I think Penn State wins 10 games. Purdue, over under 4.5 wins. Unfortunately, I want to take the over on Purdue's win total, but I can't. I'm going to take under 4.5 wins. I think they improve and get. Actually, I think it push. I think they get exactly 4 wins. They go 4-7 this year, 4-8 this year. I think that it pushes. Maybe they get 5. Actually, I'm going to switch that. I'm going to take the over. I think Purdue gets 6 or 7 wins. 6 at most. If they're lucky, 7. UCLA. I'm taking under 5.5 wins. I would have taken the over if Chip Kelly didn't lead to go to Ohio State, but I am taking under 5.5. I don't think UCLA is going to be good in football this year. I think they will win less than 5 games. At the end of this segment, I will give you 3 bets I like, 3 win totals I like from the SEC and Big Ten. USC, over under 7.5 wins. I like over 7.5. I think they can win 9 games. USC. But the problem is their defense. If their defense doesn't show up, they will win less than 7 games. I think they get 6 if their defense doesn't show up. They do have a good young quarterback. Washington, over 7.5 wins, over under. I'll take over 7.5. I think they can win 8 games at most with Will Rogers as quarterback. And last but not least, in the Big Ten, Wisconsin, 6.5 over under in their win total. I'm taking over 6 wins. I think they can get close to 8 or 9 wins. I like the over in Wisconsin's win total. So the Big Ten, the 3 win totals that I would take the over for are Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Purdue. The 3 I would take the under for are Michigan, UCLA, and Minnesota. So that is over Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Wisconsin, Ohio State, and who was the last one I said? Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Oregon. Under is UCLA, Michigan, and Illinois. Those are the 6 Big Ten teams that I would take their over-under and bet on it for their wins. Now the SEC. We get to the SEC. So the SEC, we start with Alabama. And I know I'm going to get some grief from Alabama fans. Your over-under win total is set at 9.5 wins. At 9 wins. Almost 10. But the odds makers are leaning toward the under. I can see why they would be leaning toward the under here because you thought Nick Saban retired and you got Kalen DeBoer. But what I've learned over the years is you never doubt Bama. So, as much as I want to take the under in Bama's win total, I refuse. I will take over 9.5 wins. Over 9 wins. I think Bama can win 10 games. Arkansas, 5.5. Their win total, their over-under for wins is set at 5.5. I'm taking under 5 wins for Arkansas. Under 5, I think Arkansas wins 4 games. And that's the most they will win this year. 4 games. Now we've got Auburn is next. 7.5 wins for Auburn. I don't think that's too much to ask over under. They really like under 7.5. Under 7 wins for Auburn. I don't know if I agree with that, but if I'm a betting man, I'll take the risk here and take over 7 wins for Auburn. Florida. This is another team I might get some grief from their fans, but Florida's win total is set at over or under 5.5. I am absolutely going to take the under in their win total. And the reason why is you'll see later on when I do the schedule record predictions for every Power 4 conference team and Group of 5 team. I like Florida to win 4 games, so that's under 5. I don't think Florida wins more than 4 games. Georgia. Now, if you're going to tell me at the end of last season when the odds came out for win totals for this year for 2024 college football, that Georgia was only going to be at 10.5 wins, and the odds makers don't even know which way to go with it. It's dead even. Half of them are taking the under, half of them are taking over. I'm on the side. Even though I don't really like the SEC, Georgia is still a 2-time national champion, which, if I've learned anything, there's 2 teams in the SEC you never bet against, and that is Alabama and Georgia. I will take the over all day on Georgia. On Georgia's win total. I think Georgia wins 11 games. Kentucky, 6.5 over under wins. I like I like what the odds makers are thinking here. I'm taking under 6 wins for Kentucky. I think they win 4 or 5 games. One, because they did go in the portal and get a quarterback, but I don't know how good that quarterback's going to be for them. LSU, 9.5 over under in the win total. And the odds makers like the over. I like the over here too. I think LSU's going to win 10 games. Mississippi State has their win total set at 4.5 over under. Jeff Lebby's first year as head coach. I think they win over 4 games. I think they win 5. I think Lebby's going to improve every year. I think year 1 they go 5-7. And you will see their schedule later on. Missouri, 9.5 is their over under win total. And it seems like the odds makers really like the under. I kind of like the under, but Missouri was a team I was very wrong on in 2023. And I'm not willing to take that bet again. So I'm taking over 9.5, over 9 wins for Missouri. Oklahoma, their win total set at 7.5 over under. And they see what I see with Oklahoma. I see the odds makers really like, if you look at the number, it's minus 160 for under 7.5 wins. And I like that. I think Oklahoma wins 6 games in their first year in the SEC. Ole Miss, the Portal King. The Portal Kings. Other than Ohio State. Ole Miss, win total set at 9.5 over under. This one is a classic case of smashing the over. They have it set at minus 144 for over 9.5 wins. I will take that all day long. Over 9 wins for Ole Miss is not a thing that I don't want to take. I'm willing to take that risk that Ole Miss wins over 9 games. South Carolina. Okay. Let's look at this. So their over-unders 5.5 wins. Now look at the under. It's plus 102. So do you take the under here or do you take the over? I'm willing to bite the bullet here for South Carolina and take over 5.5 wins. And I think they get 7 wins at most. And Shane Beamer saves his job 1 more year. Tennessee. 8.5 wins over under. I'll take over 8 wins for Tennessee. I think they win 9 games. Texas. Over under 10.5 wins. The odds makers really like the under. I want to know what y'all think. Would you take which way would you go? Would you take over 10.5 wins for Texas, or would you take under 10 wins for under 10.5 wins for Texas? Which basically means you're saying you're going to win under 11 games. I'm going to say I'm going to go with over 10 wins for Texas. I think they win 11 games. And Texas A&M, over under for them is set at 8.5 wins. I like under 8 wins for Texas A&M. I think they win 7 games. And last but certainly not least, Vandy. And I think this is I'm sorry, Vanderbilt fans. You're not getting any respect from the odds makers. They actually like y'all to win over 2 games. And I do too. I think you're going to win 4 games. And Clark Lee's somehow going to save his job for another year. So the 3 bets I like the over for in the SEC are Ole Miss over 9.5 wins. LSU over 9 wins. And Georgia over 10. The 3 unders I like are Florida under 5 wins, Arkansas under 5 wins, and Oklahoma under 7. And now we get to the second part, which is the group of 5. Every group of 5 school gets record prediction and schedule prediction. So we start with Temple. So Temple here, they start the year at Oklahoma. I think they're going to lose. I'm pretty sure they're going to lose that game. So they're 0-1. They lose to Coastal Carolina 0-2. At home against Utah State, I think they beat Utah State. So they're 1-2. If they don't beat UConn, I think Stan Drayton gets fired because they start the year 1-3. Then they play East Carolina at East Carolina. I think that's a win. So they're 2-3. And then they play at Navy. That's a loss, 2-4. 2-5 after they lose to Army. 2-6 after they get beat by FAU. 2-7 after they lose to North Texas. 3-7 after they beat Tulsa. 3-8 after they lose to Tulane, and 3-9 after they lose to UTSA. And there's 2 spots where I could see Stan Drayton getting fired. If they lose to Connecticut, that's 1. And if they lose to Navy, that's the other avenue I could see him getting fired. Western Kentucky 2024 schedule. So they start the year at Alabama. I want to say this is going to be a win, but it's not. They're going to get the doors blown off of them by Alabama. I think that's a loss, so they're 0-1. Then they play the battle for the Bluegrass against Eastern Kentucky, like Colonials. I think they win that. So they are 1-1. Then they play at Middle Tennessee. I think that's a win. So they're 2-1. Then they play Toledo. Toledo's a really good MAC school. I think they lose to Toledo, so they're 2-2. Then they play Boston College. I think they beat Boston College. They're 3-2. So then they go into their first bye week. They come out and they play UTEP. They go into that UTEP game 3-2. They beat UTEP, so they're 4-2. At Sam Houston, I think they beat Sam Houston, so they go to 5-2. Then they have another bye week. And they come out of the bye week and they play Kennesaw State. That's a win. So they're 6-2. Then they play at New Mexico State. That's a win, 7-2. Louisiana Tech at home. I think they lose to Louisiana Tech, so 7-3. Lose to Liberty, 7-4. Beat Jacksonville State, 8-4. So Western Kentucky is way too early. Record prediction is 8-4. So Temple was 3-9, 8-4 for Western Kentucky. Now we get to Miami of Ohio. The Red Hawks schedule. So they start the year at Northwestern. I think that's a win. So they're 1-0. I think they beat Cincinnati for the second year in a row. So they're 2-0 going into that Notre Dame game. It may be they're ranked going into the Notre Dame game. At Notre Dame. I think they lose to Notre Dame, so they're 2-1. Then they play UMass. They beat UMass. UMass is one of the worst teams in college football. So they're 3-1 going into their first conference game at Ball State. I think they beat Ball State, so they're 4-1. Beat Bowling Green 5-1. Beat Eastern Michigan 6-1. Beat Northern Illinois 7-1. Central Michigan's a loss, so they're 7-2. Beat Kent State 8-2. Lose to Ohio. Beat Ohio U 8-2. And lose to Toledo 8-3. So Miami of Ohio's way too early record is 8-3. Now here's Kennesaw State. So they start the year at UTSA. I think that's a win. So they're 1-0. Then they play Louisiana. Win 2-0. At San Jose State. That's on the road, traveling cross country. I think they lose, so they're 2-1. Then they play UT Martin after their first bye week. I think that's a win, so they're 3-1. Then they play Jacksonville State. That's a win. So they're 4-1. Then they play Middle Tennessee. Loss. At Middle Tennessee. Loss 4-2. Lost to Liberty 4-3. Lose to Western Kentucky 4-4. Beat UTEP 5-4. Beat Sam Houston 6-4. Beat FIU 7-4. Lose to Louisiana Tech 7-5. So, way too early record prediction for Kennesaw State. Their first year in Conference USA, they go 7-5. Appalachian State's 2024 schedule. So they start off against East Tennessee State. At home, I think they beat East Tennessee State, so they're 1-0. Then they go to Clemson and play at Clemson. I think they lose to Clemson, so they're 1-1. They play East Carolina. That's a win. So they're 2-1. Then they play Liberty. Lost 2-2. Beat Georgia State 3-2. Lose to James Madison 3-3. Beat Old Dominion 4-3. I think they beat South Alabama to get the 5-3. And then they lose to Coastal Carolina 5-4. Georgia Southern they beat at Georgia Southern, so they're 6-3. Beat Louisiana 7-3. And lose to Marshall 7-4. So Appalachian State goes 7-4. Their way too early record prediction for Appalachian State is 7-4. Liberty. Liberty starts the year at home against Campbell. I think that's a win. So they're 1-0. At New Mexico State is their second game of the year. I think they won that. So they're 2-0. They beat UTEP 3-0. Beat East Carolina 4-0. So, and then I think they beat Appalachian State. So they're 5-0. Coming out of their first bye week, they play FIU. They're going to be 6-0 going into that. So they go out of their second bye week. They play at Kennesaw State. That's a win. So they're 8-0. At Jacksonville State. 9-0. Jacksonville State at home. I think they beat Jacksonville State, so they're 9-0. At Middle Tennessee, I think this is where they lose their first game. And y'all can laugh at me and say you're crazy. I think they lose to Middle Tennessee, so they're 8-1. No, they're 9-1. Beat UMass 10-1. Beat Western Kentucky 11-1, and beat Sam Houston 12. They go 12-1 in the regular season. Way too early prediction for Liberty is 12-1. Bowling Green. The Bowling Green Falcons. Their schedule. So they start out for Fordham. I think that's going to be a win, so they're 1-0. Then they go to Penn State. That's going to be a loss. They're going to lose to Penn State and A&M, so they're 1-2. Then they play Old Dominion. That's a win, 2-2. Beat Akron 3-2. Beat Ball State 4-2. Beat NIU 5-2. Lose to Western Michigan 5-3. Beat Kent State 6-3. Lose to Miami 6-4. Lose to Central Michigan 6-5. And lose to Toledo 6-6. So Bowling Green's way too early record prediction is 6-6. Eastern Michigan. EMU. They start the year at UMass. I think they win that, so they're 1-0. Then they play at Washington. That's a loss, so they're 1-1. At home against Jacksonville State, win 2-1. St. Francis, the Red Flash of St. Francis, I think they beat them, so they're 3-1. Lose to Akron 3-2. Beat Akron 4-1. 4-2. Lose to Central Michigan 4-3. Lose to Toledo 4-4. Lose to Buffalo 4-5. Lose to Miami 4-6. Beat Kent State 5-6. Somehow I think they're going to beat Ohio 6-6. 5-6. They were 6-6. And they go 7-6 after they beat Western Michigan. So way too early record prediction for Eastern Michigan is 7-6. We are not done yet. We've still got some more teams to do. Now we got Buffalo's way too early 2024 record prediction. So Buffalo did not have a good year last year. They start the year against Lafayette at home. That's a win. At Missouri, lost. UMass is a win. UConn's a win. So they start 3-1. Then they get into the conference play, and they play Akron. I think they lose to Akron, 3-2. Beat Western Michigan. No, lose to Western Michigan, 3-3. Lose to Toledo, 3-4. Beat Kent State, 4-4. Lose to Ball State, 4-5. Lose to Eastern Michigan, 4-6. Beat NIU, 5-6. And lose to Ohio U, 5-7. So Buffalo's way too early record prediction is 5-7. I did say we were doing the entire group of 5. So next, we're going to get UTSA. So UTSA starts the year at home against Kennesaw State. I think that's a win. So they're 1-0. At Texas State, win 2-0. Then they play at Texas. That's a loss. So they're 2-1. For Houston Christian, win 3-1. Army, loss 3-2. Beat East Carolina 4-2. Beat Rice 5-2. Beat Tulsa 6-2. beat FAU 7-2, lose to Memphis 7-3, beat North Texas 8-3, and beat Temple 9-3. So even with a new quarterback, UTSA still goes over 8 wins. Now we get to FIU. FIU 2024 schedule. So FIU starts the year at Indiana. I think that's a win, so they're 1-0. Beat Central Michigan 2-0. Lose to FAU 2-1. Beat Monmouth 3-1. Lose to Louisiana Tech 3-2. Three and three. Then they come out of their bye week, their first bye week, and they play Liberty. Loss 3-4. Beat UTEP 4-4. Lose to Sam Houston 4-5. Lose to New Mexico State 4-6. Beat Jacksonville State 5-6. Lose to Kennesaw State 5-7. And beat Middle Tennessee 6-7. So they go 6-7 as their way too early prediction. So let's get the rest of the conference. We already did Kennesaw State. We've already done FIU. We've already done Liberty. We've already done Western Kentucky. So we got Louisiana Tech, UTEP, Sam Houston, New Mexico State, and Middle Tennessee. And in the MAC, we've got Central Michigan. We've already done Eastern, Bowling Green, Eastern Michigan, Bowling Green, Miami of Ohio. So we still got Northern Illinois, Toledo, Western Michigan, Northern Illinois, Kent State, Akron, and Ball State. And in the Mountain West, we've got the entire Mountain West today. So we're not even close to being done yet. So let's get Middle Tennessee. Let's knock out Conference USA. So Middle Tennessee, they start the year at Tennessee, at home against Tennessee Tech. That's a win. At Ole Miss, that's going to be a loss. Western Kentucky at home, loss. So they're 1-2, 1-3 after they lose to Duke, 1-4 after they lose to Memphis. Then they come out of their first bye week. They play at Louisiana Tech. That's a win. So they're 2-4. Kennesaw State at home, 3-4 after they beat them. After they beat Jacksonville State, they're 4-4. 5-4 after they beat UTEP. 5-5 after they lose to Liberty. 6-5 after they beat New Mexico State. And 6-6 after they lose to FIU. No, 5-7 after they lose to FIU. So Middle Tennessee goes 5-7 as their way too early 2024 prediction. Again, I will be doing something similar to this before the season starts, where I'll give you actual record predictions. These are way too early. So Conference USA, just to Middle Tennessee, we need to do Sam Houston, New Mexico State. We're going to go UTEP next. The UTEP Miners. No, we're going to do something here. Hold up. Okay, let's get back to this. Now we can go back into this. Let's go. So, UTEP, they start the year at Nebraska. I think that's going to be a loss to their own one. They beat Southern Utah 1-1, lose to Liberty 1-2, beat Colorado State 2-2, beat Sam Houston 3-2, lose to Western Kentucky 3-3, lose to FIU 3-4, beat Louisiana Tech 4-4, lose to Middle Tennessee 4-5, beat Kennesaw State 5-5. Then they play Tennessee. That's a loss, so they're 5-6, and they get the 6-6 after beating New Mexico State. So the way too early record prediction for UTEP is 6-6. So New Mexico State. Mexico State's 2024 schedule. They start the year at home against Southeast Missouri, so that's a win. So they're 1-0. Lose to Liberty, 1-1. Beat Fresno State 2-1. 3-1 after they beat Sam Houston. 4-1 after they beat New Mexico. They lose to Jacksonville State. 4-2. 4-3 after they lose to Louisiana Tech. 4-3. 4-4 after they lose to FIU. 4-5 after they lose to Western Kentucky. 4-6 after they lose to Texas A&M. 5-6. 4-7 after they lose to A&M. 5-7. 4-8 after they lose to Middle Tennessee. And 4-9 after they lose to Utah. So the way too early record prediction for New Mexico State is 4-9. And we've got, I believe, one more team left in Conference USA. Two more. Jacksonville State and Sam Houston. We will get to Jacksonville State next, and then it's going to be Sam Houston last. So Jacksonville State starts the year at home against Coastal Carolina. I think that's a loss. They lose to Louisville, so they're 0-2 going into the Eastern Michigan game. I think they beat Eastern Michigan. So they're 1-2. Beat Southern Miss 2-2. Beat Kennesaw State 3-2. Beat New Mexico State 4-2. Lose to Middle Tennessee 4-3. Lose to Liberty 4-4. Lose to Louisiana Tech 4-5. Beat FIU 5-5. Lose to Sam Houston 5-6, and lose to Western Kentucky 5-7. So the way too early record prediction for 2024 football season for Jacksonville State is 5-7. And the last team in Conference USA is Sam Houston, who was awful last year. Let's see if they can get some wins this year. So they start up the year at Rice. I think that's a win, so they're 1-0. At UCF, loss 1-1. Then they play Hawaii at home. That's a win, so they're 2-1. New Mexico State, loss 2-3. 2-2. Texas State, loss 2-3. UTEP, win 3-3. Western Kentucky, loss 3-4. 3-5 after they lose to FIU. 3-6 after you lose to Louisiana Tech. 4-6 after you beat Kennesaw State. 4-7 after you lose to Jacksonville State. And 4-8 after you lose to Liberty. So the way too early record prediction for Sam Houston State is 4-8. Okay, here we go. So we get the American Athletic Conference. You get all the group of 5 except for the American, because we've already done that conference in a previous video. So Conference USA was just done. We got the MAC left. Actually, you may still get the American. You did do Temple. Western Michigan starts the year at Wisconsin. That's a loss. 0-1, 0-2 after they lose to Ohio State. 1-2 after they beat Bethune-Cookman. 2-2 after they beat Marshall. 2-3 after they lose to Ball State. 3-3 after they beat Bowling Green. 3-4 after they lose to Buffalo. 3-5 after they lose to Central Michigan. 3-6 after they lose to Northern Illinois. 4-6 after they lose to after they beat Eastern Michigan. 5-6 after they beat Akron, and 6-6 after they beat Kent State. So the way too early record prediction for Western Michigan is 6-6. So Toledo, the Rockets. We're at 47 minutes. I actually got to change this up. So Toledo starts out the year at home against Duquesne. I think that's a win. So they 1-0. They're 2-0 after they beat UMass. They go to Mississippi State. That's a loss, so they're 2-1. 3-1 after they beat Western Kentucky. 4-1 after they beat Akron. 5-1 after they beat Buffalo. 6-1 after they beat Eastern Michigan. 7-1 after they beat Northern Illinois. 8-1 after they beat Central Michigan. 9-1 after they beat Bowling Green. 9-2 after they lose to Ohio, and 9-3 after they lose to Miami of Ohio. So Toledo's way too early 2024 record prediction is 9-4. So we had Western Michigan. Are we going to do Central now? Yes. We already did Buffalo. Did Bowling Green. So Central Michigan, they start the year at home against Central Connecticut State. I think that's a win, so they're 1-0. They beat FIU 2-0. Beat Illinois 3-0. San Diego State's going to be a win, so that's 4-0. At Western Michigan, at home against Western Michigan, 4-1. They lose to Western Michigan. Beat Bowling Green 5-1. Lose to Ohio 5-2. Beat Ball State 6-2. At Eastern Michigan, that's a win, 7-2. Lose to Miami, Ohio 7-3. Beat Northern Illinois 8-3. And lose to Toledo 8-4. So Western Michigan, Central Michigan's our way too early record prediction is 8-4. 8-3, correction. So you got Ball State, and then Akron. I think that's all the MAC schools. They start the year home against Missouri State. That's Ball State. I think they beat Missouri State, so they're 1-0. At Miami of Florida, lost 1-1. Beat James Madison 2-1. Beat Vandy 3-1. 4-1 after they beat Northern Illinois. 4-2 after they lose to Western Michigan. 5-2 after they beat Bowling Green. 5-3 after they lose to Miami. 6-3 after they beat Buffalo. 6-4 after they lose to Central Michigan. 7-4 after they beat Kent State. And 7-5 after they lose to Ohio U. So way too early record prediction for Ball State is 7-5. So that's the entire. We got Akron left. We did Buffalo. We did not do Buffalo. We have Buffalo, Kent State, and Akron left. In Ohio U. So here's Akron. I can already tell you there's probably going to be a lot of losses on here for Akron. So Akron starts the year at Ohio State, loss. Rutgers at home, at Rutgers, loss, so they're 0-2. Colgate at home, win. At South Carolina, loss, so they're 1-3. Eastern Michigan at home, win. Lost to Bowling Green, so they're 2-4. 2-5 after they lose to Toledo. 2-6 after they lose to Buffalo. 3-6 after they beat Kent State. 3-7 after they lose to Northern Illinois. 3-8 after they lose to Ohio U. And 4-8 after they beat Western Michigan. So Akron's way too early record prediction is 4-8. So you got Kent State and Buffalo left. So the last two MAC schools. So Kent State starts the year at Pitt. I think that's a loss. Then they play St. Francis. We've already gone over Kent State. Never mind. So Ohio U, it looks like, is the only school in the MAC left. I just remembered we did go over Kent State. So did we go over Ohio U? Did we? No. So they start the year at Syracuse. I think that's a win. So they're 1-0. Play South Alabama. Win 2-0. They beat Morgan State 3-0. Lose to Kentucky 3-1. Beat Central Michigan 4-1. Beat Kent State 5-1. Lose to Miami of Ohio 5-2. Beat Eastern Michigan 6-2. Beat Akron 7-2. Beat Buffalo 8-2. Beat Ball State 9-2. Lose to Toledo 9-3. So Ohio U's way too early record prediction is 9-3. So now you get the Mountain West. And this is going to be over an hour long. It's almost 12 o'clock. So Nevada. They start the year at home against SMU. I think that's going to be a loss. So they're 0-1. Beat Troy at Troy. 1-1. Georgia Southern at home. That's a win. Minnesota, that's a win. So they're 3-1. Then they play Eastern Washington. 4-1. At Boise State, I think that's where they lose their second game. So they're 4-2. Lose to Hawaii. 4-3. Beat Air Force. 5-3. Beat Colorado State 6-3. Beat Fresno State 7-3. lose to Oregon State 7-4, beat San Jose State 7-5, 8-4, and beat UNLV 9-4. So way too early record prediction for Nevada, and I think this is a stretch. This is before the season, way before the season. 9-4. Yes, you heard me right. 9-4. Who else do we got from that list? We're gonna go Hawaii. So Hawaii starts the year at UCLA at home, win at Sam Houston, win, so they're 2-0, 3-0 after they beat Northern Iowa, 3-1 after they lose to Fresno State, 3-2 after they lose to Boise State. They beat Nevada, so they're 4-2. Four and one. No, 4-2. 4-2. Then they played New Mexico. That's a win, 5-2. 5-3 after they lose to San Diego State. 5-6 and 6-4 after they beat Utah State, and 7-4 after they beat Washington State on the road. So the way too early record prediction for Hawaii is 7-4. So Mountain West, we still got Wyoming, Utah State, UNLV, San Jose State, San Diego State, New Mexico, Air Force, Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State. And we're going to get Colorado State out of the way now. So Colorado State starts the year at Texas, loss, so they're 0-1. They beat Northern Colorado 1-1, lose to Colorado 1-2, beat UTEP 2-2, lose to Air Force 2-3, lose to New Mexico 2-4, lose to San Jose State 2-5, beat Utah State 3-5, lose to Wyoming 3-6, beat Fresno State 4-6, lose to Nevada 4-7, and beat Oregon State 5-7. So Colorado State's way too early record prediction for 2024 is 5-7. Mountain West. Next is Wyoming. Wyoming 2024 schedule prediction. Start the year at Arizona State, win 1-0. Beat Idaho 2-0. Beat BYU 3-0. At North Texas, that's going to be a win. So they start the year 4-0. At Colorado State, win 5-0. New Mexico on the road, win 6-0. 6-1 after they lose to San Jose State. 6-2 after they lose to Air Force. 6-3 after they lose to Boise State. 7-3 after they beat San Diego State. 7-4 after they lose to Utah State, and 8-4 after they beat Washington State. So way too early record prediction for Wyoming is 8-4. So now we get to Utah State. Utah State starts the year at home against Robert Morris. That's a win. So they're 1-0. They lose to USC, so they're 1-1. Beat Utah, lose to Utah 1-2. Beat Temple 2-2. Lose to Boise State 2-3. Beat Colorado State 3-3. Lose to Hawaii 3-4. Beat New Mexico 4-4. Beat San Diego State 5-4. Beat UNLV 6-4. lose to Wyoming 6-5, and beat Washington State 7-5. So the way too early record prediction for Utah State for 2024 is 7-5. We already got Hawaii. Let's go UNLV. Close. So UNLV starts the year at Houston. Loss, so they're 0-1. Utah Tech, win. Kansas, loss, so they're 1-2. Beat Syracuse 2-2. Lose to Hawaii 2-3. Beat San Jose State 3-3. Lose to Boise State 3-4. Lose to Fresno State 3-5. Lose to Nevada 3-6. Beat San Diego State 4-6. Beat Utah State. Lose to Utah State 5-7. And lose to Oregon State 5-8. So 5-8 record is the way too early prediction for UNLV. Mountain West. Fresno State. We've already done Colorado State. So Fresno State starts the year at Michigan. Now, this would be a different story if Harbaugh was not the coach. If Harbaugh was still the coach, I would say this is a blowout. I think Fresno State keeps it close, but they lose, so they're 0-1. Then they play Sacramento State, win, so they're 1-1. Beat New Mexico State, 2-1. Beat UCLA, 3-1. At Air Force, lost 3-2. Beat Colorado State, 4-2. Lose to Hawaii 4-3. Beat San Jose State 5-3. Beat Washington State 6-3. Lose to Nevada 6-4. Lose to New Mexico 6-5, and beat UNLV 7-5. So the way too early record prediction for Fresno State is 7-5. So next we got Boise State. And I would venture to bet that their schedule is not finalized. Yes, it is. So they start the year at Georgia Southern. That's a win. So they're 1-0. They play at Oregon, lost 1-1. Beat Portland State 2-1. Beat Oregon State 3-1. Lose to Nevada 3-2. Beat San Diego State 4-2. Beat Utah State 5-2. Beat Washington State 6-2. Lose to Hawaii 6-3. Beat San Jose State 7-3. Beat UNLV 8-3 and lose to Wyoming 8-4. So Boise State's way too early record prediction is 8-4. We just did Boise State. Now we're going to do Air Force. So Air Force. Their way too early record prediction. 1-0 after they beat Merrimack. They lose to Baylor, so they're 1-1. Lose to Navy 1-2. Lose to Army 1-3. Beat Colorado State 2-3. Beat Fresno State. Lose to Fresno State 2-4. Beat San Jose State 3-4. Beat Oregon State 4-4. Lose to Nevada 4-5. Beat New Mexico 5-5. Beat San Diego State 6-5. And lose to Wyoming 6-6. So Air Force's way too early record prediction is 6-6. So we get San Jose State, New Mexico, and San Diego State left. So San Jose State starts the year at home against Sacramento State. Win. They are going to start the year 3-0 after beating Sacramento State, Kennesaw State, Washington State. Then they play Stanford. That's a win, so they're 4-0. They go into conference play 4-0. And then they play Air Force. Lost 4-1. Beat Colorado State 5-1. Lose to Fresno State 6-2. Yeah, 6-2. 6-2. Beat Boise State 7-2. Lose to Nevada 7-3. Beat UNLV 8-3. Lose to Wyoming 8-4. And beat Oregon State 9-4. So San Jose State's way too early record prediction is 9-4. San Diego State and New Mexico left. So San Diego State starts the year at home against Texas A&M Commerce. When 1-0, they beat Oregon State 2-0, beat Cal 3-0, Central Michigan 4-0, 5-0 after they beat Washington State, 5-1 after they lose to Boise State, 5-2 after they lose to Air Force, 5-3 after they lose to Hawaii, 6-3 after they beat New Mexico, 7-3 after they beat UNLV, 8-3 after they beat Utah State, and 8-4 after they lose to after they lose to Wyoming. So the way too early record prediction for San Diego State is 8-4. And last but not least, New Mexico in the Mountain West. So New Mexico starts the year at home against Montana State. I think that's a win. So they're 1-0. At Arizona, lost 1-1. At Auburn, lost 1-2. Mexico State at New Mexico State, win, loss. So they're 2-3. Yeah, they're 2-3 going into the Colorado State game. I think they win that, so they're 3-3. Hawaii's a loss, so that's 3-4. They lose to Air Force, 3-5. Lose to Fresno State, 3-6. 3-7 after they lose to Wyoming. Beat Washington State, 4-7. 5-7 after they beat San Diego State, and 5-8 after they lose to Utah State. So New Mexico goes 5-8. That's their way too early record prediction. And now we get to the Big Ten. Actually, no. We're not doing the Big Ten. We're going to go over the rest of the AAC. Let me pull my screen back up. We already done Temple. Temple and UTSA. So that leaves us with Army, Rice, Charlotte, Tulane, Tulsa, UAB, USF, North Texas, and Navy. at FAU. So we're going to go Rice first. Rice starts the year at home against Sam Houston. That's a win, so they're 1-0. Texas Southern, that's a win, 2-0. Then they play at Houston, 2-1. They're going to lose that. Beat UConn, 3-1. Lose to Army, 3-2. Lose to Memphis, 3-3. Beat Charlotte, 4-3. Lose to Navy, 4-4. 4-5 after they lose to South Florida. 4-6 after they lose to UTSA. 4-7 after they lose to Tulane. And 5-7 after they beat UAB. So Rice goes 5-7. Is their way too early record prediction? And we also got East Carolina, which we're going to do East Carolina next. So East Carolina starts the year at home against Norfolk State. That's a win. At Old Dominion, win, 2-0. Lose to Appalachian State, 2-1. Lose to Liberty, 3-1. 3-2. Lose to Army, 3-3. Lose to Charlotte, 3-4. Beat FAU. Lose to FAU, 3-5. 3-6 after you lose to Navy. 4-6 after you beat Temple. 4-7 after you lose to UTSA. 5-7 after you beat. No, 4-8 after you lose to North Texas, and 4-9 after you lose to Tulsa. So way too early record prediction for East Carolina. It's 4-9. So Charlotte next. The 49ers. So James Madison's their first game of the year. I think they won that, so they're 1-0. At North Carolina, 1-1. That's a loss. Gardner-Webb, they're going to beat Gardner-Webb 2-1. They beat Indiana 3-1. Lose to UAB 3-2. Beat East Carolina 4-2. Lose to USF 4-3. Lose to Tulane 4-4. Beat FAU 5-4. Lose to Memphis 5-5. Lose to Navy 5-6. And beat Rice 6-6. So Charlotte, way too early record prediction, is 6-6. Now we got Army. Army starts the year at home against Lehigh. I think they won that, so they're 1-0. They beat Air Force 2-0. Lose to Navy 3-0. 3-1. Beat UAB 4-1. Beat East Carolina 5-1. Beat Rice 6-1. Lose to UTSA 6-2. Beat FAU 7-2. Beat North Texas 8-2. Beat Temple 9-2. And beat Tulsa 10-2. So Army in their first year in the American, their way too early record prediction for me is 10-2. With their only losses being to Air Force and Navy. Everybody else they beat. Except for UTSA. No, they beat Navy, so they're 10-2. So the American. So you got Army, East Carolina. FAU is next. So they play Michigan State at Michigan State to start the year. I think that's a win. They beat FAU, so they're 2-0. Beat UConn 3-0. Beat Wagner 4-0. So they start the year 4-0. I think they start the year 5-0 after they beat East Carolina. 5-1 after they lose to Army. Did I say? I think they lose to Charlotte, so they're 5-2. Beat North Texas 6-2. Lose to USF 6-3. Beat Temple 7-3. Beat Tulsa 8-3 and 8-4 after they lose to UTSA. So FAU second year in the AAC, their way too early record prediction from me is 8-4. Now we're gonna go to North Texas. North Texas starts the year at home at South Alabama. That's a win. They start the year 2-0 after they beat State Enough Austin. They lose to Texas Tech 2-1, lose to Wyoming 2-2, lose to FAU 2-3, lose to Memphis 2-4, lose to Army 2-5, beat East Carolina 3-5, lose to Tulane 3-6, beat Tulsa 4-6, beat Temple 5-6, and lose to UTSA 5-7. So North Texas, way too early record prediction from me in 2024. It's 5-7. So you get Navy's the next one. So Navy starts the year at home against Bucknell. They're 1-0. 2-0 after they beat Air Force. Then they play Notre Dame at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. That's a loss. So they're 2-1. They lose to Army 2-2. Beat East Carolina 3-2. Lose to Charlotte 2-3. Lose to Memphis 2-4. Beat Temple 3-4. Lose to Tulane 3-5. Beat Rice 4-5. Beat UAB 5-6 and lose to South Florida at South Florida 5-7. So Navy goes 5-7 in the second year under Brian Newberry, and that is their way too early record prediction from me. Memphis. So Memphis, way too early record prediction for me. They start the year at home against North Alabama. That's a win, so they're 1-0. Then they play Troy at home, 2-0. At Florida State, I think they're going to lose that, so they're 2-1. Beat Middle Tennessee, 3-1. Beat UAB 4-1. Lose to Charlotte 4-2. Beat North Texas 5-2. They beat Rice 6-2. Lose to Navy 5-3. Lose to Tulane 5-4. Lose to USF 5-5. And they lose to UTSA 5-6. Something that's hold up. So they beat North Alabama 1-0. Beat Troy 2-0. Lose to Florida State 2-1. Lose to Middle Tennessee 2-2. Beat UAB 3-2. Beat Charlotte 4-2. Beat North Texas 5-2. Lose to Rice. No, beat Rice 6-2. 6-3 after they lose to Navy. 6-4 after they lose to Tulane. 6-6 after they lose to USF, and 6-7 after they lose to UTSA. So Memphis's record is 6-7. Their way too early record for me is 6-7. Sounds a little funky. That's because it is. Tulane. Here's my way too early record prediction for Tulane. So they start the year at home against Southeastern. That's a win, so they're 1-0. At Kansas State, lost 1-1. At Oklahoma, win 2-1. At Louisiana, win 3-1. Then they get to conference play, and they play Charlotte at home. They're 3-1 going into that game. I think they beat Charlotte at Charlotte, so they're 4-1. They lose to Navy 4-2. Beat North Texas 5-2. Beat Memphis 6-2. Beat Rice 7-2. Lose to USF 7-3. Beat Temple 8-3. Beat UAB 9-3. So Tulane's way too early record prediction is 9-3. We get Tulsa next. Tulsa's way too early record prediction for me. So they start the year at home against Northwestern State. That's a win. So they're 1-0. They beat Arkansas State at Arkansas State 2-0. Then they play Oklahoma State. That's a loss, 2-1. Then they play at Louisiana Tech. That's a win, 3-1. Then they play at North Texas. I think that's a win. So they start the year off really hot, 4-1. Then they lose to Temple, 4-2. Lose to Army, 4-3. Beat East Carolina, 5-3. Lose to FAU, 5-4. Lose to UTSA, 5-5. Beat UAB, 6-5. And lose to USF, 6-6. So I think Tulsa goes 6-6 in Kevin Wilson's second year, and that is their way too early record prediction. So UAB, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty, the last two teams in the American. So they start the year at home against Alcorn State. That should be a win, so they're 1-0. Played Louisiana Monroe. That's a win, 2-0. At Arkansas. Embarrassingly, I think they find a way to lose, so they're 2-1. They beat UConn 3-1. Lose to Army 3-2. Lose to Charlotte 4-2. Lose to Memphis 4-3. Lose to Navy 4-4. Lose to Rice 4-5. Lose to Tulane 4-6. Beat Tulsa 5-6 and lose to USF 5-7. So UAB goes 5-7 as their way too early record prediction. And the last team in the American Athletic Conference that gets a way too early record prediction is South Florida. So they start the year at home against Bethune-Cookman. I think that's a win. They play Alabama. I might still be going to this game. I don't know yet. I may still be going. But I think now that Alabama has a new head coach, I think they have a better chance of beating Alabama. But I think that's a loss. So they're 1-1. They come back home. They go to Southern Miss. I think that's a win. So they're 2-1. Then they come back home for a big game against Miami. I think this is the upset of the year if they can pull it off. I think they beat Miami. So they are 3-1 going into conference play at Charlotte. I think they beat Charlotte. So that's 5-1. 5-1. 6-1 after they beat FAU. 7-1 after they beat Rice. 7-2 after they lose to Tulane. 8-2 after they beat UAB. 9-2 after they beat Memphis. 9-3 after they lose to Navy, and 10-3 after they beat Tulsa. So way too early record prediction for South Florida is 10-3. And ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up today's episode of the College Football Show. Yes, when I do college football stuff like this, even tomorrow, it will not be listed under the Alec News Sports Show. It will be listed under the College Football Show. The Alec Knows Sports podcast / show will be all other sports. NBA, MLB, NHL, all that. But that wraps up today's episode. I will see you back here tomorrow for another episode of the College Football Show. Until then, I'm out.